They never expected to wake up one day with thoughts of you filling their mind from the very first moment their eyes opened. That is the first thing you need to understand. Most people do not willingly face emotions that have been buried deep inside for a long time. Instead, they use all their strength to keep those feelings hidden. They convince themselves they are in control. They tell themselves everything is normal. They build strong walls around their heart and believe those walls will protect them. At first, it seems to work. They continue with their daily routine. They focus on work, responsibilities, and distractions. From the outside, everything looks calm and steady. Nothing appears different. But beneath that calm surface, something else is happening. The feelings they tried so hard to ignore are slowly growing stronger. It does not happen overnight. It happens little by little. Every thought they push away finds a way to return. Every emotion they deny quietly waits for another chance to be noticed. What they believe they have buried never truly disappears. You probably sensed this change yourself. Something felt different. Maybe it was a shift in their energy. Maybe it was the way they looked at you. Maybe it was the way they suddenly became distant and then unexpectedly attentive again. There was a hidden movement taking place beneath everything they showed the world. This was never really about distance. It was never just confusion. And it was never simply mixed feelings. It was something much deeper. It was the growing realization that what they felt for you was becoming impossible to ignore. Most people do not welcome strong emotions when they first appear. Instead, they question them. They analyze them. They search for reasons why the feelings cannot be real. They tell themselves it is temporary. They tell themselves it is only attraction. They tell themselves it is curiosity. Anything feels easier than accepting the truth. Because accepting the truth means admitting that someone has touched a part of them they believed was protected. That is where the struggle begins. The stronger the feeling becomes, the harder they fight against it. Every time their heart moves toward you, their mind pulls them back. Every time they start to accept what they feel, fear steps in and tells them to stay where it is safe. This creates an exhausting inner battle. Part of them wants to move forward, another part wants to run away. Neither side fully wins. Psychologists have long talked about this kind of conflict. People often push uncomfortable emotions out of conscious awareness because those emotions challenge the image they have of themselves. But hidden emotions do not simply disappear. They stay beneath the surface, and over time, they create pressure. The pressure grows quietly. Day after day, thought after thought, moment after moment. Eventually, that pressure becomes too strong to contain, and when that happens, something changes. What was once hidden starts demanding attention. What was once denied starts becoming impossible to overlook. Many people do not realize this until they reach a breaking point. They spend weeks, months, or even years convincing themselves that a feeling means nothing. Then one day they wake up and discover that the feeling has become stronger than ever. The emotion they dismissed yesterday becomes the emotion they think about today. The person they tried to forget becomes the person they cannot stop remembering. That is why this moment feels different. Nothing new was created. Nothing suddenly appeared from nowhere. The truth had already been there. What changed was their ability to keep denying it. The walls they depended on started cracking. The excuses stopped working. The distractions lost their power. And for the first time, they were forced to face what had been standing in front of them all along. You. Not as a passing thought, not as a simple memory, but as a reality they could no longer avoid. In the quiet moments, your presence became impossible to escape. When everything around them became silent, thoughts of you grew louder. The usual distractions no longer worked the way they once did. The activities that normally occupied their attention suddenly felt empty. And every path they took seemed to lead back to the same place. Back to you. Attraction can be ignored for a while. curiosity can fade. Temporary emotions often disappear on their own, but feelings with real emotional weight behave differently. They stay, they return, they grow stronger through resistance. That is exactly what happened here. The more they tried to explain you away, the more important you became. The more they searched for logical answers, the less those answers satisfied them. They labeled it coincidence. They called it timing. They blamed chemistry. They blamed circumstances. They blamed anything they could find. Yet none of those explanations removed the feeling, because deep down, they already knew something important. People do not spend this much energy fighting emotions that mean nothing. They do not struggle to bury something that lacks significance. And they do not keep returning to thoughts that hold no emotional value. Every attempt to remove you from their mind only made your presence stronger. Every effort to gain control seemed to have the opposite effect. Instead of fading, the feeling became clearer. Instead of weakening, it became more powerful. That realization frightened them, not because of who you are, but because of what they felt becoming impossible to control. For a long time, they believed they understood themselves completely. They believed they could predict their reactions. They believed they could manage every emotion and every decision. Then you appeared. And suddenly, the rules they depended on no longer seemed certain. You became the unexpected factor. The one thing they could not fully explain. The one emotion they could not neatly organize. The one presence they could not simply switch off. That loss of certainty created fear. People often fear losing control more than they fear the emotion itself. The emotion is not what scares them. What scares them is realizing they cannot command it the way they once thought they could. And that is where everything started to change. Feelings this strong never remain still for very long. They do not stay trapped in the same place forever. They grow. They become stronger. They continue moving forward even when someone desperately tries to stop them. Right now, they are standing at the edge of everything they have been holding back for so long. All the pressure that has been building inside them is reaching a point where it can no longer be ignored. They are trying their best to stay in control. They are trying to hold on to the version of themselves that feels safe and familiar. But underneath that effort, everything is changing. The foundation they once depended on is shifting. The certainty they once felt is beginning to disappear. What makes this experience so powerful is that it was never only about you. You were not simply another person who crossed their path. You became the mirror that reflected something deeper inside them. You awakened parts of themselves they had forgotten. You brought attention to emotions they thought had been buried forever. You helped reveal desires, fears, hopes, and needs that had remained hidden beneath the surface for years. That process is still happening. It has not finished. It continues every day. Every moment of reflection pushes them a little further toward understanding themselves. At first, they believed acceptance would solve everything. They thought that once they admitted the truth, the pressure would disappear. They expected peace. They expected relief. They expected clarity. But that is not what happened. The moment they finally accepted what they felt, the situation became even more real. The feelings did not become smaller. They became impossible to dismiss. The storm inside them did not end. It simply received a name. And once something has a name, it becomes much harder to escape. A feeling that remains vague can be ignored. A feeling that has been clearly recognized demands attention. Awareness changes everything. It transforms uncertainty into reality. It takes something hidden and places it directly in front of them. Now they can see it clearly. And because they can see it clearly, pretending becomes much harder. They can no longer convince themselves that nothing is happening. They can no longer rely on the same excuses that worked before. The truth follows them into every quiet moment. Every memory carries more meaning than it once did. Every thought feels heavier. Every reminder feels stronger. Even ordinary moments seem different now. The smallest things can suddenly bring you back into their mind. A familiar place, a certain song, a simple conversation, a random silence. Something unexpected can trigger a memory and pull them right back toward thoughts of you. That is because the mind works differently once something becomes emotionally significant. When denial loses its power, another struggle begins. The mind starts dividing itself. One part wants to move closer. One part wants to retreat. One part sees possibility. The other sees risk. One part imagines connection. The other fears vulnerability. And neither side is willing to surrender easily. This is not simple confusion. It is a real internal conflict. A battle between desire and self-protection. A battle between what they want and what they fear. Both forces are becoming stronger at the same time. That is because what they feel has moved beyond simple attraction. Attraction can come and go. Attraction can fade. Attraction can be replaced. But emotional attachment is different. Attachment begins creating roots. It connects itself to deeper parts of a person. It becomes tied to meaning. It becomes tied to identity. It becomes tied to the future. And that is exactly why it feels so threatening. For someone who values control, attachment can feel dangerous. It introduces uncertainty. It creates emotional risk. It requires trust. And trust means accepting that another person has the ability to affect your emotions. That reality is uncomfortable for them. Many people never notice this process while it is happening. They only notice the symptoms. They notice the overthinking. They notice the hesitation. They notice the inconsistency. They notice the sudden distance. But they fail to recognize the deeper cause. The stronger the emotional connection becomes, the stronger the defenses become as well. That is why they did not immediately move forward after recognizing their feelings. Instead, they paused. They analyzed everything. They questioned every detail. They examined every possibility. They searched for certainty before taking a step. Simple things suddenly felt complicated. Ordinary interactions started carrying greater meaning. Small decisions felt larger than they should. That is because emotional importance changes perception. When something matters deeply, the risks appear larger too. The possibility of disappointment feels heavier. The possibility of rejection feels more painful. The possibility of loss feels more threatening. Anything valuable automatically creates fear. People rarely fear things they do not care about. Fear often reveals value. And that realization creates another contradiction. The feeling that draws them toward you is the same feeling that makes them cautious. The closer they feel emotionally, the stronger their instinct becomes to protect themselves. This contradiction creates constant tension. It drains energy. It follows them throughout the day. It enters moments that once felt normal. It appears when they least expect it. Even when they focus on other things, some part of their attention remains connected to what they feel. That is why certain moments affect them so strongly. A brief pause, a particular tone of voice, a simple memory, a familiar expression. These small triggers can bring you back into their thoughts instantly. The subconscious mind holds onto emotional significance much longer than the conscious mind realizes. It does not follow schedules. It does not obey logic. It does not disappear simply because someone wants it to. That is why your presence continues to remain with them. You have crossed an important line inside their emotional world. You are no longer optional. You are no longer a passing thought. You have become something they must eventually understand. And now they face a difficult question. Why you? Out of all the people they could have met, why does your presence affect them in this way? Why does your absence feel noticeable? Why do thoughts of you return so easily? Why does this connection feel different from others they have experienced before? The more they search for easy answers, the fewer answers they find. Because this connection cannot be reduced to one simple explanation. It is not based only on timing. It is not based only on attraction. It is not based only on circumstances. It comes from something deeper, a recognition that feels natural, a familiarity that cannot be easily explained, a sense of understanding that exists beyond logic. That realization creates another challenge, because if the connection is real, then it requires something from them. It requires honesty. It requires action. It requires openness. It requires vulnerability. And those are exactly the things they have spent years avoiding. So they delay, they create distance, they tell themselves they need more time, they convince themselves they should wait. But distance does not always weaken genuine emotions. Sometimes distance removes distractions. Sometimes distance creates clarity. Sometimes distance leaves a person alone with the truth they have been avoiding. And when distractions disappear, emotions become easier to hear. That is exactly what is happening now. The truth is becoming louder, the feelings are becoming clearer, and the connection is becoming harder to ignore. They feel it when thoughts return without warning. They feel it during unexpected emotional moments. They feel it when silence becomes impossible to escape. Most importantly, they feel it in the growing realization that suppression is no longer working. Every attempt to push the feelings away eventually fails. Every effort to regain complete control becomes more difficult. The truth remains present. The awareness remains present. The connection remains present. And because of that, the pressure continues building. They are no longer fighting only the feeling itself. They are fighting what the feeling reveals about them. It reveals their desire to connect. It reveals their desire to be understood. It reveals their need to be seen for who they truly are. It reveals fears they have hidden from themselves. And that can feel overwhelming. Being deeply affected by someone requires vulnerability. Vulnerability means lowering defenses. It means accepting uncertainty. It means allowing another person to matter. That is why they continue moving back and forth. One moment they move emotionally closer. The next moment they pull away. One moment they imagine what could happen. The next moment they focus on every possible risk. This pattern is not random, it serves a purpose. It allows them to experience the emotions while avoiding a complete surrender to them. But there is a limit to how long that balance can last. You cannot keep postponing something meaningful forever. Eventually, reality demands an answer. And every delay creates its own consequences. Suppressed emotions never simply disappear. They transform. They become inner tension. They become restlessness. They become constant mental noise. They become the feeling that something important remains unfinished. And that feeling continues growing until it can no longer be ignored. Lately, the noise inside them has become much louder. What once felt like an occasional thought has turned into something that follows them throughout the day. It affects more than their emotions now. It reaches into the way they think. It changes how they react. It influences their decisions in ways they do not always recognize. Sometimes they notice it in their inability to focus. Their attention drifts without warning. They begin one task and suddenly find themselves lost in unrelated thoughts. Their concentration weakens because part of their mind is occupied by something unfinished. Other times, it appears through changes in mood. A small problem feels larger than it should. A minor frustration creates a stronger reaction than normal. Things that once seemed insignificant suddenly feel difficult to tolerate. The reason is not always obvious. What they are really reacting to is the pressure they continue carrying inside. An unresolved truth is demanding attention. A reality they have tried to postpone keeps moving closer. And it wants something from them that they are not fully prepared to give. That is why the tension keeps growing. They are much closer to their breaking point than they realize. The real change is not happening on the surface. From the outside, they still appear composed. They continue their routines. They speak normally. They go about their daily life as if nothing has changed. But beneath that calm appearance, something important is beginning to crack. The mind can only carry contradiction for so long. Eventually, maintaining the act becomes exhausting. The truth starts pushing through the spaces where denial once existed. It begins appearing in quiet moments. It appears during reflection. It appears when distractions disappear. Most importantly, it appears when they stop performing for the world around them. Because deep inside, there is a place where pretending no longer works. There is a place where the truth exists without needing permission. That is where the real struggle is happening. Every form of repression carries a price. At first, the price seems small. A person pushes something away and believes they have solved the problem. But hidden emotions continue gathering strength. They remain active beneath awareness, and eventually the cost returns. Now that cost is becoming impossible for them to ignore. The longer someone suppresses something genuine, the stronger it becomes. What once felt manageable begins demanding attention. What once felt distant starts feeling immediate. What once felt uncertain starts becoming undeniable. That is exactly where they are now. The feelings they once controlled have begun controlling their attention instead. The emotions they once dismissed keep returning with greater force, and the more they resist, the more powerful those emotions seem to become. When the subconscious mind reaches its limit, it does not negotiate. It does not ask politely. It pushes forward. It forces itself into awareness. Sometimes it appears through sudden emotional reactions. Sometimes it appears through frustration that seems disconnected from the situation. Sometimes it appears through unexpected moments of sadness, longing, or reflection. The source may not always be obvious, but the pressure behind it remains the same. Thoughts of you interrupt their focus. Memories appear without warning. Moments they believed were forgotten suddenly return with surprising clarity. The impact is impossible to overlook. You are no longer simply someone who exists in the outer world. You have become part of their inner world, and that changes everything. People can avoid places, they can avoid conversations, they can avoid situations, but they cannot easily avoid what lives inside their own mind. Inner realities travel with them everywhere. They follow them into quiet evenings. They follow them into moments of reflection. They follow them into dreams. They follow them into spaces that once felt completely private. That is why resistance is becoming harder. The question is no longer whether the feelings exist. That part has already been answered. The evidence has become too strong. The emotions have become too clear. The connection has become too obvious. Now a different question stands in front of them. What are they going to do about it? That question creates fear, because action requires vulnerability. Action creates uncertainty. Action means accepting the possibility of rejection, disappointment, or change. Most people spend years trying to avoid situations that demand this level of honesty. Yet honesty is exactly what this moment requires. The truth is that they have already been changed. The transformation has already happened. The feelings have already left their mark. No amount of denial can reverse what has taken place inside them. The change goes deeper than attraction. It reaches into how they understand connection. It changes how they view relationships. It alters what they expect from emotional closeness. Most importantly, it changes how they experience your absence. Your absence speaks louder than your presence ever did. That is one of the hardest realities for them to accept. When someone becomes emotionally significant, their absence creates its own kind of presence. It fills empty spaces. It creates reminders. It turns silence into something noticeable. And that is exactly what they are experiencing now. It is not simply about missing you. It is about feeling your influence even when you are not there. That influence appears in unexpected ways. It appears during ordinary moments. It appears during important moments. It appears when they least expect it. And every time it appears, it reminds them of what they have been trying to avoid. The tension keeps returning. It moves in cycles. Sometimes it becomes quieter. Then it comes back stronger. Every attempt to move beyond it seems to lead them back to the same realization. Nothing feels quite the same anymore. Everything is quietly compared against the connection they feel with you. Most of the time, they are not even aware they are making these comparisons. It happens automatically. The mind notices differences. The heart notices differences. And those differences slowly weaken the walls they spent so long building. Other experiences feel less meaningful. Other connections feel less intense. Other interactions feel less genuine. The comparison is silent but powerful. Over time, it becomes impossible to ignore. Eventually, they are forced to face a truth they avoided for far too long. This connection cannot simply be replaced. It cannot be exchanged for something easier. It cannot be dismissed as if it never mattered. That realization creates a new kind of fear. A quiet fear. A slow fear. A fear that grows gradually. If something feels irreplaceable, then losing it becomes frightening. The possibility of losing something meaningful often hurts more than never having it at all. That awareness is beginning to affect their behavior. They are becoming harder to understand, even to themselves. Their actions seem inconsistent. One day they feel certain. The next day they feel unsure. One moment they want to move closer. The next moment they pull back. The pattern repeats again and again. Part of them wants relief. Part of them wants the tension to end. Part of them wants to stop wondering. Part of them wants to stop carrying unanswered questions. That side wants movement. It wants honesty. It wants clarity. But another side remains cautious. That side values safety. That side fears exposure. That side worries about losing control. And because both sides are strong, the conflict continues. The struggle exhausts them. Neither side is willing to surrender. Each side believes it is protecting something important. One protects connection. The other protects survival. One moves toward possibility. The other moves toward safety. And the pressure between them keeps growing. This conflict has expanded beyond simple feelings. It has become a question of identity. Who are they really? The version that keeps running, or the version that keeps feeling?